housekeeping while we're waiting for a moment for everybody on. Actually, let me quickly go over here to do that. So we have a bunch of great content coming up next week as well. And I just want to mention it quickly, and then we're going to get to this. So we have Raj Singh on Monday from Ivy, George Goddell, Jen Mayer, Screen Pilot, and that's Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, we have Amar Lalvani of Standard coming on. So a lot of really great stuff coming up. I want to thank Go Moment and Hannah Lee PR and RCCB Law for sponsoring us. Really appreciate it. Every dollar is very well received because of lack of revenue right now. And to that point, if you're not interested in, if you are interested in sponsoring, reach out. But if you're not, you can donate on our website, on our Instagram, or just reach out to us and tell us you'd like to throw in a couple of dollars. That would be fantastic. And that's what we got going on right now. So I'm thankful that all of us have been able to join here. And let's get into the discussion. So what we wanted to, I talked with Jon Goss of Neuehouse and Josh White of Neuehouse a while ago, and we were just thinking of different subject matter that we thought was interesting and important to discuss. And he brought Markus into the discussion, and Markus brought Tony into the discussion. So really happy to have this very interesting group of folks together. And what we thought of, what we wanted to sort of frame this around is collective innovation and the rethinking of space, how we think about space, and also how we think about community. And I think it's a very interesting subject matter, but let's just get a teeny bit of background for everybody on here. I know we put links and titles and all that kind of stuff on our social and email and so forth, but let's just go. I'm just going left to right from what I can see. Markus, who do you work for and what do you do there?
Yeah, first of all, thanks Andrew for bringing this panel together. I think in this time where we're all kind of in our survival mode and isolated, it's good to be connected and have a communication. I think that makes the community special. So thanks from my side. I'm in New York right now. Fortunate, healthy, family is good. I just moved a year ago outside of Manhattan into a bit of a park area where everyone was laughing at me, but now it's a good time to be. So hello everyone, thanks for joining. I'm with Design Hotels. We are a community of visionaries in hospitality spaces, 350 member hotels around the world. It's all about culture, community, and how we create a very unique experience. So really looking forward to this conversation and how can we drive innovation in space. I'm looking for the Americas for the group and for global innovation, and community and culture is a key piece in this innovation piece. We always think about technology when we speak about innovation, but I think culture and community is getting even more important.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. Jon, give us who you work for and what do you do?
Yeah, and thanks again, Andrew, for putting this together. And it's great to have Markus, who's a old friend, collaborator, and a member of Neuehouse. So wonderful to have him involved, and to meet Tony, who's a new friend. So that's a great start. I'm the Chief Brand Officer for Neuehouse. So for those who don't know what Neuehouse is, we're a private workspace for creators and thought leaders and innovators. We have 3 locations: Hollywood, which is on the back of my screen, one in New York in Madison Square, in the Flatiron District, and the newly opened Bradbury Building in downtown LA. And I'm responsible for brand communications, partnerships, programming, and events at Neuehouse. And we, similar to Markus, which is why we've done so much together, we share a real sort of deep-rooted understanding and put an importance on culture and community and creativity. So we think about those 3 C's and how we're a physical space where culture and commerce can collide and come together. So it's been an interesting 9 weeks without physical space, but I think this conversation will therefore be a really fascinating one.
Cool, cool. That's great. Thanks, John. Tony, you're up, buddy.
Andrew, it's a pleasure and honor to be here. Marcus, pleasure to be with you as well. Thank you for the invitation. John, nice to meet you. Excited. So I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm an investor, a neighborhood developer, community activist, environmental activist. I'm actually currently at my retreat center called ChoZen Retreat in Central Florida on a 20,000 acre nature preserve next to a intentional interfaith commune that my grandmother started in the 70s, where I was born, I was schooled, and grew up in commune. So community is definitely at the core of my entire upbringing and my philosophy and everything that I do in my business life and my personal life as well. And kind of my life exists at the intersection of art, culture, innovation, and community. I am the co-founder of the Magic City Innovation District in Little Haiti, Miami, which is it aspires to be a city of the future model, fully mixed use kind of city that's environmentally forward, that's socially conscious, that's inclusive, that's equitable, was entitled for 8 million square feet in a poor, underserved Haitian community. So we're in the process of developing that. I was one of the early pioneers of the Wynwood Arts District in Miami as well. And that was an amazing experience, and still developing some projects there. A partner in The Collective from the UK, the largest co-living company that is doing a project on one of the sites that I invested in with them. I'm also a partner in a development of a Marriott AC and Element in Brickell. So I'm a principal in quite a few large developments in South Florida. The new venture that I'm working on is called the Future of Cities Platform, and it's part venture fund, part real estate platform, and part think tank, do tank that is working on some really exciting and innovative projects. And I'm very interested to hear what the other panelists have to say, but really been studying this very unique kind of evolutionary time and how it's impacting all industries and all people, and how it's going to affect kind of the human condition, and what are we going to do about it, and how do we reconnect in a resilient way, in a post-COVID way, in a safe way that connects with what's most important to us, which is human connection and community. I think that's really what's at the kind of at the core of everything that we care about, is this culture and this creativity and innovation. And so I really find this discussion fascinating and honored to be here.
Wonderful, thanks. Thanks very much. So everybody who's on the call, we're keeping you on mute and keeping the video off so we can just sort of focus on the speakers, but please do use the chat function and send out a message to everyone on chat, and I'll take a look at it. If you have questions, I'd love for you to throw questions on there. See, we can get started with that. That'd be great. Anybody who has a thought or question, throw it out there. Okay, but let's start with this topic of collective innovation, rethinking space. What do you guys think unites us around the topic? Okay, and how do you? I mean, all of you are doing very innovative, very interesting projects where it's not only commercial, but it's also it's design, it's art, it's culture, it's being and creativity is part of all of what you're doing. When you think of collective innovation, what does that mean for you in your businesses? I would love to hear. John, why don't I start with you?
I think there's two sides of it for Neuehouse. There's collective innovation for us as a business, and then there's the actual collective innovation amongst our community, which is, and they live together side by side, because I think our core purpose is to provide a space where interdisciplinary creatives, either individually or as companies, can come together and work in a space, a physical space that allows them to innovate within their individual companies or together as groups coming together to collaborate. So from our perspective, obviously it's extremely challenging right now because we're closed and have been since March the 16th, and I think we were the first of the private members clubs and workspaces to close. So as you can tell from that decision, we were very conscious about making safe decisions for both our team members and our community. And then in the subsequent 8 to 9 weeks, it's been a challenging time to be stuck at home and not be physically with each other, which is like the essence of what Neuehouse is all about, but also to be able to have a little bit of time to pause and reflect and think and try to innovate and change some of the things that we may not have had the time to think about before, which is one of the gifts we were kind of paradoxically given during this work from home shutdown period. So, obviously we're going to talk about digital and the virtual world. We've pivoted a lot of our content and programming into the virtual world, which has been, again, two sides to every coin. Have been very exciting and interesting for us to try and innovate in a way that we've always been very reliant on the physical, and what that's done for our creative teams in terms of how we program online, but also then knowing that we're competing with every company in the world who's doing virtual programming. I think there was a statistic before this all happened where we were each receiving 300 feet of content a day on our phones. I don't know what the number is now, but I would imagine that's probably tripled. So cutting through the virtual noise means you have to be so creative and so innovative. And we've hosted a bunch of programming with our members and put them really sort of first in our thinking, where a lot of the programming has been having conversations with all of those different people. And the magic of Neuehouse is we did a conversation with some members 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I had somebody who owned a photography studio, and somebody who was a cultural strategist, and somebody who was a designer, and somebody who was a filmmaker. And the blessing of Neuehouse was you had all these incredibly bright creative minds. And I think in terms of innovation, we're fortunate to be part of a community that is deeply inherently creative. And I think the creative folks in our world and other communities will be some of the people that help us solve a lot of these problems. I don't think anybody knows any of the answers yet. I still think we're in the trenches. You called it survival mode before. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I think we're doing our utmost to find ways to, pivot and transition and think about alternative ways. And Tony said this before, everybody's in this together. Everybody's trying to work out ways to get through this. The collaboration and the convergence both within our industry and other industries and people coming together, I think that's innovation in itself. I think that people have been stuck in their own lanes for such a long time, worrying about profits and shareholders and top line and bottom line, that if anything I would take away from this, it's both the collegiate sentiment I've felt with both people I've spoken to outside of my industry, within the industry, with our members, with my teammates, and I think only good things will come of this, despite all of the struggles we're all going through.
Super cool. That's great. Tony, I'm going to go to you with the same question. Before I do, I just want to mention, we're going to throw up a poll right now. Jackie, if you could throw that up, that'd be great. We're going to throw up a poll. We have 3 little questions we're going to throw up during this as we're going along. So take a look at it, and it should pop up on your screen shortly, and then answer it, and we'll show the results as we go along. But these are interesting because I think that they are indicative of some of the stuff that we're talking about. So, Tony, let me go to you about what does collective innovation mean to you, and how do you sort of measure that?
Well, I think this is a really interesting and unique opportunity, and not to minimize the pain and suffering that many people are going through, and more difficult in many other places than what we're experiencing here in the United States. There's the indigenous people, for example, in the Amazon basin, are dying in inordinate numbers, and so there's a lot of people who are suffering through this process. But I think the silver lining in all of this is that there's one common enemy that we are all kind of geared towards, and whether you call that COVID or whether you call that disconnection or alienation or depression or what have you, there's really a unique moment for social innovation and this collective innovation opportunity for us all to come together with, cross-sector collaboration, unlike we've ever seen before at a global scale, environmental activism and innovation in that space, kind of innovation in the built environment. How, resiliency is now taking on a whole new meaning beyond just, environmentally resilient or climate change resilient. Now it's, it's COVID resilient and pandemic resilient that we're thinking about. And how do we redesign spaces that are going to allow for human connection in a safe manner that people are going to feel comfortable, whether you are a conspiracy theorist and you believe that this is a hoax, which I have many friends that do, or whether you are taking it very seriously and you will be social distancing for a while. I mean, it's very uncertain, the future that we have, but one thing we know is that we're all going through this together and we're all here for each other. And I think this is really when you're starting to see real humanity. And I think before we break through, we have to break down, right? That's kind of like what Bucky Fuller believes, and Buckminster Fuller's thesis of, we don't need to fight against old systems. They're breaking down anyway. We need to reinvent the new way forward that's regenerative, that's equitable, that's inclusive. And so how we engage and how we commune is going to be different. I don't think that there's a going back to business as usual. I don't think there's a V recovery. I'm not of that, but I think there's an evolution of humanity, which excites me. And that's really what I want to be part of. So I think that therein lies the opportunity to really transition to this new world that we're all imagining. And I think the creatives play as much an important role as the scientists and the physicians and the doctors and the astronauts and everybody. It's the creatives that always start the movement, because what we're looking for is a new movement. We want to be part of something that we can all believe in. And I think that's the exciting part of the challenging time that we're going through right now.
That's great. Markus, how about you?
I mean, there's this interesting debate about what's the new normal, right? And I think we all kind of realized that it's good that we stop this and we're not going back to the normal, right? And the reason why I'm saying this is in every industry, in every enterprise, there's some old school habits which just work because business just came in, economy was good. It doesn't mean it was right? So, and I think there will be a completely new age or movement, as Tony said, of collaboration. When we look at what happened in the past in all the society crises, like climate crisis, which was a big topic prior to COVID-19 and remains to be a big topic. But at the end, on a day-to-day basis, it only affected a small group of people. COVID-19 affected all of us immediately, and everyone is reaching out, and that's as Tony said, in a miserable time, that's a good thing. There's a good thing into this crisis that we have to reach out, we have to collaborate, and we have to find solutions. And what's still happening, what we see in COVID-19 is every government, every hospital, every company is fighting on their own, fighting for the same budget, scientists fighting for their own kind of stake in this. And I think we need to collaborate, and it needs to be a movement in collaboration. Innovation is not coming from top down, it's coming from bottom up. I think we need to bring the community together, and it needs diversity. And then hopefully we find a way that we can speak, not even in industries, but we can speak cross-industry, cross-border. I think that's my hope, and I'm seeing the first conversation happening, right? When you look at probably everyone in this call sees it. When you call people these days, there's not a price tag, a budget first. It's about what is it we can do together, right? And I think that's exciting, and that's what I'm very much looking forward in the next couple of weeks, months, and hopefully we change our habit how we collaborate and innovate, and don't forget too soon once this is a little bit over.
Yeah, no, that's those are great comments from all of you guys. I love, somebody put up a comment here, which I think is really great and totally am psyched about. It says, embracing the ambiguity as an opportunity to experiment and test new ideas in order to find new solutions. And that's a very difficult thing to do, I think. People find ambiguity very stressful. They want to know what's going to happen. And I think that has been to some extent taken out of our hands right now. And so, we call it sort of going with the flow. Going with the flow is really hard. It's great. It's easy to say you're going with the flow when you know it's going to happen, but it's hard to do it when we don't know when this is going to end. Is it going to fundamentally change our businesses, the way we do things, the way we go to restaurants, the way we go to hotels, how we interact? Is it permanent? Is it just a short-term thing? If we knew it was going to end in September, people, I think, would be okay with saying, oh, screw it, I'll just take the summer off and we're going to relax. But since we don't know that ambiguity is very, very hard, which is interesting. Going on to the next thing, and now we're going to put up, the poll we just put up was about lobbies, and most people said lobbies are going to, remain valuable and often used part of the experience. Somebody put up though that we didn't include current footprint, but completely reconfiguring to allow more social distancing and flexibility to change. I personally, I'm just going to give my opinion, and I want to hear your guys' opinion. I personally think that what is happening now is not a permanent change. Yes, there will be some things that stay behind, but I think that human beings are social animals. And I've said this many times on IG Live and all of our other channels, so some people know my opinion on this, but we're social animals. We want to engage, and great hotel lobbies, great well-designed spaces, great. When you walk into Neuehouse, New York, the first thing that hits you when you walk in the door is, holy shit, this is amazing design. It's so cool. And when you walk in some of the design hotels, same thing. That's how you feel. And I think that that's integral to our experience, and that they will absolutely stay for a period of time, 12 or 18 months. We may have to change it, but otherwise, I don't think it's a permanent change. Personally, that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Whoever, go for it.
I just participated in the vote, and I obviously voted for lobbies will remain, and I was really curious to see what's the general opinion. It's great to see that that's the majority. I think to your first point, Andrew, I think on experimentation, I think done is better than perfect these days, and we have to experiment. There's no budget out there. There's no time to make big plans. It's about experimentation. There was an article in Harvard Business Review just, I think, a week ago, and they were talking about a booking platform. I'm not saying the name, but they do 20,000 tests a year. And if the test says the headline is pink, it's pink, right? We normally don't do that because we want to be safe, right? But now there's time of uncertainty. We don't know where we are in 3 months. It's about experimentation. And the lobbies and the physical space, the Neuehouse, design hotels, what Tony does with ChoZen, they will not disappear as long as you have a highly curated community and you have a highly curated space for purpose. This is where people will go. We will take much more conscious decision when we want to meet people, right? And things will definitely don't have a value where you say, hey, let's do a Zoom call. There's no need to meet right now. There's no need to go to this space. There's no value, there's no purpose. But if there's a value, a purpose in this, and something you can really take out, I think these spaces will be even more relevant than they have been in the past.
Yeah, no, that's great. John or Tony, do either of you guys want to talk about that idea of lobby?
I think I'd jump in for a second, and I'd love to hear what Tony's got to say, because he's building cities as well. But from our perspective, obviously we're not a hotel, but our spaces are kind of have a lobby design entrance to them, and a sort of a public space element. And really, I agree with the majority of the people on the call, and what Markus said is that for us, that's the sort of the magic space of where those serendipitous collisions can take place, and that's where in the ambiguity, that's where new ideas, new perspectives, and new conversations can evolve and come, and that's where innovation will come from. And it won't come from people just sitting at home on their own over Zoom calls trying to do things, right? So I think they're inherently important. They're definitely important to us, and I can't see how any of Markus's design hotel lobbies would go away. It would just fundamentally shift the whole functional side of what those public spaces do. But also, to your point, Andrew, the emotion that we all derive from a beautifully designed space. So I think that ambiguity is a good thing in many ways, because I think it will allow people to innovate and try new things, and some things may stick and some things may not, but that experimentation is a really positive thing. And I think design will be elevated onto a new pedestal in a way that it has before, but I think it will become a universally important pillar of every physical company in a way that it hasn't always in the past. And I think, consumers are becoming more conscious and more discerning. And I think they're going to look to more minimalist design, and designs that kind of both evoke an emotion and a functionality, but that will sort of fundamentally transition and pivot as people think about new spaces. Obviously, reconfiguring existing spaces is one thing, but the new spaces that come from this, when we think about a world that returns to something less than 6 feet, I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. And we have 2 new projects in the pipeline for Neuehouse, and I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation both within our design team and with our architectural partners and other collaborators to think about what that will look like, even if we have a vaccine and there is a return to some semblance of normalcy.
Yeah, no, that's great. Tony, you want to chime in?
I have a personal experience. I'll never forget the moment that I first walked in Ian Schrager's Delano in South Beach when I was a nightclub promoter in the 90s, and how it impacted me emotionally. And actually, the pioneers of the design of the boutique hotel movement really thought of they were so ahead of their time, because the furniture is very kind of spaciously placed, and people are kind of posing, if you will, and it's an experience, it's a movie set in a way. And so I don't think the public spaces go away. It's how we utilize them. And I think right now it gives us an opportunity for rapid prototyping and for innovation and figuring out, well, we don't know, because humans are emotional creatures. We don't know how they're going to behave. Everybody's on a spectrum of how concerned they are about contagion and other things. Some people think it doesn't exist, and other people won't go out in public for a while. Who knows if people want to be in nightclubs, but then in South Korea, people went right back to going to nightclubs. So I think it's really, it's on a case-by-case example, but I believe there's going to be a huge trend towards outdoor public spaces, outdoor lobbies, beach clubs, open air places, even in colder weathers, because I think that's what people want. And I think that's really kind of the direction of kind of what I believe is kind of bringing the natural environment into the built environment, what we call biophilia and biomimicry. And I think that's really the way for us to get in tune with nature, because I truthfully believe that I'm not trying to be a pessimist or trying to be dismal at all, but I feel that if we don't get in balance and control of consumerism behavior and this need for growth and profits and just focusing on our bottom line, we're out of balance with nature. And I think that's why these types of pandemics are happening. And I think more will happen. So I do believe we'll find a vaccine. I believe people should have the right, whether they take a vaccine or not. I mean, I believe in those types of sovereignty, and that's my personal opinion. And that's going to be an interesting road, and I think one thing is for sure, the world has now become digital. Even senior citizens and elderly people know how to use Zoom. They know how to use technology. So the world has just been digitized. Everybody is now, who has a device, can connect virtually. So that is going to have a lasting impact, and I think that was one of the questions that just came up. I think it is here to stay. I don't think that it's a substitute for human connection, but I think that it's here to stay. And I think if we leverage technology for good, and we're not letting technology control us, then there are certain modification and adaptation in a post-COVID world that can create more safe containers for human connection. So I think I'm a fan of technology as long as we're using it for our own benefit and not the other way, not being controlled by technology.
I also think, just as another point, because I had a very interesting conversation with Sir Norman Foster, who's a truly great Brit, and he was talking about his space, which he's won a ton of awards for in London, which is Bloomberg's headquarters, which he uses fresh air to sort of create an air conditioning function within that space. And I think this notion of sustainability and the climate and ecology will no longer become just a sort of catchphrase for brands to use. I think designers of physical spaces will genuinely have to now work out ways to innovate on how they make spaces genuinely sustainable. And I think Tony's probably much more literate in this area than I am, but we're definitely going to have to think about it in some of our future spaces in a much more critical way. And I think everybody will too, because I think consumers will expect it, because the scientists are going to drive a lot of conversations over the next 9 months, but I think they're going to become like design. They're going to become, their voices will need to be heard much more than they have been, particularly over the last 6 to 9 months. So,
yeah, super interesting. So we just put up this second poll, which I'd love for you guys to just weigh in on, but we asked about virtual communities. And listen, virtual communities can mean lots of different things, but since we're talking about collective innovation and space and thinking about our communities, what about virtual communities? Are they something that's super valuable? Are they, okay for now, but are going to go away, or are they totally, overrated? And you can see here that everybody thinks, or 73% of people think that it's valuable and are going to remain for the long term. Once again, maybe I'm old school, I don't know, but there's only so much virtual stuff that I can do every day. There's only so many things I can log on to, LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter or whatever, or any other virtual community I'm part of. And ILC is its own virtual community in a way, but really at the core of it, it's actually getting back, for me at least, getting back together, spending time with people, having a drink or a meal, and just shooting the shit and really sort of trying to connect. I think that's my way of connecting. I think virtual communities are great. They have their place. They are valuable, but what's more valuable is actually, connecting directly. But what do you guys think? Are virtual communities, is that obviously we have to use them now because we're all apart. So we have to use virtual community. Is that the main focus of what goes forward, or do you focus more on your actual community and getting back together? How do you think about this, guys? Anybody is fine.
I don't think it's a question of is it a physical community, is it a virtual community, right? I think we will see both moving forward. Virtual will not disappear 100%. We will have a physical and a virtual platform moving forward. And just look what's happening right now. I think we have always produced content. We always did when we did experiences in spaces and destination. It was not about flying 200 people. We did a beautiful art project in Marfa, Texas, in an art community, a part of our further initiative. And this was not about flying 250 people into Marfa and taking over the space, right? This was about creating content, creating something with the artist, and creating content and distribute it to the community out there where they can take something in their lives, in their day-to-day lives, is professional or personal, right? So I think it's now this is even more. And I give you an example. What Neuehouse is a great example. I'm a member of Neuehouse since over 4 years. I speak almost more to Neuehouse members than I have been in the past, because in the past I was running around in the airports, flying around, couldn't be in a space, and Neuehouse introduced a beautiful platform just a couple of weeks ago, and John, you can talk about. But I think as long as you have values in a community and you're kind of connected around community, you can be connected even you're isolated at the point. So I think even we get out of isolation, we would take conscious decisions: are we meeting as a community, but we will definitely be able to stay connected because there's a culture and values around it. And then certain things on virtual will disappear, but we will see more virtual. But I think it's not the question, is it virtual, is it physical? It's definitely in parallel.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it's all about the alchemy of how you blend the physical with the digital. So, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I think if you're going to really cut through on digital, you have to be really, really thoughtful about the content you're putting out and who you're targeting with that content. Why are people coming to Neuehouse for the digital content in the same way that, why do people go to certain shows on Netflix, and why has Quibi been a relative failure as a newly launched micro content platform? So I think it's all about getting the balance between the two. I don't think anybody in the physical world will be completely reliant on digital. I think they'll see it as a new opportunity to to do better in that space. I know that's how we think about it, that we definitely kind of over-indexed on the physical side and under-indexed on the virtual digital side. And this is that opportunity that's been given to us to become better at the virtual digital side and talk to a larger audience. You know, we did some programming where we had people, you know, dialing to Zooms from Bulgaria and Edinburgh and Pakistan. So like the new opportunity to talk to a much larger global audience for us is phenomenal. At the same time, you know, I think there will be the physical experience and people's desire to have a great physical experience will be put on a pedestal. And I think, you know, that's another great thing that will come from this is when you do go back to the physical world, you'll be very conscious about which physical spaces you want to go to. And you'll probably be more grateful for those as well. So again, there's a lot of terrible things happening, but I think there's a lot of silver linings to come from this. And if we come out of this as a company with a new digital opportunity that allows us to connect to a much bigger virtual community, that's a plus. And if we come out with a more evolved physical space, again, that's why this could be a real opportunity for us. That's
super interesting. I guess I would ask you guys, I mean, I can tell you for us, for ILC, the reason we're able to do so much digital content now is that we can't meet in person. So we've repurposed our energy and our firepower to doing digital. But when we go back to meeting in person, you know, that takes a lot of energy and so forth in doing that. So can you continue to do both as much? Just something to think on. You don't have to answer it unless somebody wants to. But I feel like now we're pouring all of our energy into it because we can, and that's all we have at the moment. But when we're able to meet in person, I think yes, you should still have some level of digital engagement, but I think people pull back a lot. But I'm not sure if you guys agree with me on that.
I'm gonna go back to the previous question because I'm not, you know, I'm an old school guy in many ways. I'm not a millennial. I'm just a little older than that. And so, you know, I've been kicking and screaming about being, you know, pulled into the digital age myself. And I like the one-on-one human connection, you know, connecting with people in person. You know, our retreat center is a 40-bed, you know, eco retreat facility, and people connect deeply in person, you know, on many different levels. And, you know, the human connection is so important. And so we don't have a lot of volume. It's a very targeted, specific niche demographic, you know, kind of conscious, you know, the conscious set that wants to focus on impact hospitality, if you will. And we were, you know, closed, and we were here immersed in nature, which is a big attraction to why we're here. And we decided to, you know, launch an online platform, which was called the ChoZen Path. And from that, really to kind of share content and information around our philosophy and our principles and what matters to us and permaculture and the things that we are doing more, that we have this time on our hands to reflect and introspect and to go in deep to what we actually believe in and what we represent. And we did this full moon retreat, this virtual retreat with Unify. And it was a bit of a technological feat for us because I'm not super high tech. And, you know, we had YouTube, and then we had OBS, and we had live performers in different locations, and we had 14,000 viewers. Actually, Markus was there, and we ended up dancing until 2 in the morning. There was a surprise DJ who came on, and it was really actually much more fun than I thought. And I wasn't drinking any alcohol, so it was a completely sober experience, and it was very different. You know, it was. You might think that this is a sterile experience, but, you know, I think we're all being stretched to think beyond the pale of what's normal for us. And I think that's healthy. I also don't want to sit in front of a screen for 8 hours, 10 hours a day. That's not healthy either, for many reasons. So I think there's definitely a fine balance, but I don't think the social communities and the social networks are going away. Facebook has more people than any other country in the world. You know, it's 2 billion users on Facebook, right? And growing. So I think that the digital world is here to stay, but it's about the fine balance between staying connected, you know, to the digital world and being connected at the human level. And I think that that's really the balance that we're all going to struggle to find over the near term, you know, and long term as well.
Yeah, super interesting. And I agree with you, Tony. I think there is a balance you have to have. And I also agree with John and Markus and how they expressed their thoughts on that. This is
just maybe, Andrew, if I may.
Please.
And I think, Tony, you would probably have never thought about a virtual retreat if COVID-19 wouldn't happen.
Never.
And I was part of it, and it was such an amazing community feeling. Even we were like probably people from around the world, the music, talks. I was texting Tony the next day. I even feel I have a hangover from a party. So I think it can be complementing what we do in the physical spaces, right? So I think, and that's why virtual, if the only thing we shouldn't do is replicate the nonsense we do sometimes in the physical experience and put it now everything in virtual, right? I think this is really focusing on the right things. Less is more, but then I think virtual can be a great opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, super interesting. To that point, to the virtual / physical, what's the balance, all that kind of stuff. So we asked this last question, which is about events, but it doesn't have to be about events. You can take it as physical presence in your building. Almost 60% of the people on this call said they feel comfortable enough to attend an in-person event in the fourth quarter of 2020. And very few people, less than 10%, said not going to do it for a long time until after the vaccine. And I think that's great. Now we are, most of us here are in hospitality and travel, so take that with a grain of salt. I think we're sort of leaning towards more travel and so forth. But I think it's quite amazing that people are saying, at least in this little teeny poll, very small polling size, but that they're interested in going in the fourth quarter, coming to an event. Well, what about just to your retreat, to one of your Neuehouse locations, or to one of your hotels, Markus? How do you feel about people coming back in, and how do you take care of them with that feeling of hospitality? It sounds like they're coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting requests for bookings for small groups that can responsibly socially distance. We have geodesic domes in nature where people are, 50, 100 feet from one another. We have, an Airstream kitchen. We're developing an off-grid, outside kitchen where people can kind of serve themselves and be, pandemic resilient and health conscious, and, social distance to the extent that they feel comfortable taking all the necessary precautions. So I think there's a way to adapt to what's going on, and you have to be very specific, in terms of what you're offering. And I think, it's different from a urban context and in a dense area than it is for a rural area like a retreat center, because we're in nature anyway, and people do silent retreats and there's more space. So I think there's more challenges in smaller spaces. But I think you can innovate, and I think, groups specifically that are comfortable being with each other, or will have group testing, or, have just, resigned to the fact that they're going to be together, or people that are in the same company or whatnot. I think there's going to be some flexibility, and I think there's going to be people who want to travel and do stuff, and it's just going to have to be done in a very conscious, responsible way. And you have to connect with your customers and your consumers and find out what is it that they desire. How do you make them comfortable, and how do you make them safe? And that's that's kind of the big question that we're all addressing right now.
But Tony, just going back to you quickly, does that surprise you that almost 70% of the people on this call, or the 70% of the people who answered the poll on this call, are ready to go for an event, which means if they're ready to go for an event, I think they're easily ready to go to a hotel in the fourth quarter. They're eager to go and want to go. Does that surprise you at all, or does that seem like the direction we're going?
Not at all. People have cabin fever, and some people are doing the calculus that are just playing, they feel that, if they get sick, they get sick, but they're not going to sacrifice their mental health or other things. And certain people are more vulnerable than others. So I'm not one to judge. I respect everybody's decision for their own personal space, their sovereignty, their health, and I encourage everybody to be responsible. But everybody's different. Everybody has they're going through this sort of very differently. And I know many people have gotten the virus and who now have the antibodies. We don't know if the antibodies now protect you from a reoccurrence. So there's a lot of unknowns out there, but I think, humans, and particularly the ones that are, come to our types of places, are, the people who are a little bit more creative and innovative and risk takers. I would say the type of consumer that, you know, comes to a boutique hotel, design hotel, the art set that's at Neuehouse, and that type of demographic. You know, they're a little bit of a risk taker. So I think people will gather, and, you know, there'll be varying degrees of what level of comfort they have. But I do think a lot of things are going to happen outdoors more. We're seeing a lot of push to outdoor events, socially distanced events, and we're working on a few spaces that, you know, ourselves. And I think there's going to be a lot of distress and dislocation in the hospitality market. You know, I think the federal government is artificially propping up the economy. We know that's not going to last forever. There's, you know, the court system is not open, so there can't be foreclosures, and there's no revenue, but we're all in it together. So everybody is unlike the last time where there were people, and there's definitely a lot of liquidity and cash on the sidelines, but there's really no revenue, you know, or limited revenue, I should say. So I think there's really an opportunity to reposition a lot of these assets and make them, you know, evolve them into the next category of pandemic resilient hospitality. And what that looks like, you know, I think we need to prototype. We need to experiment, and it's going to be a phased experiment. It's different today than it will be when we have a vaccine. You know, it's different, you know, than it was a month ago. And I think we have to be open-minded, and we have to rely on this collective innovation to, you know, to work together and see what's working. And I think the virtual world is helping us crowdsource, you know, experiences and information from around the globe. We know what's happening in China. We know what happened in South Korea when people went back to nightclubs. So you're hearing anecdotes of what's happening, you know, around the world, and it's giving us kind of, you know, some information on what's the best way to proceed.
Cool. Jon and Markus, either one of you guys want to chime in on that, on your feelings of people's desire or intended desire to intentions to come and visit you guys?
I mean, I'm not sure what Markus would say, but we've had a lot of conversations. I don't think it would be too different to this, but I'm not surprised by the number. You know, Tony talks about cabin fever, digital fatigue. You know, humans are social animals, as you said before, Andrew. And I think, you know, the longer this goes on, the more people will, you know, be kind of desperate to get back into a physical space where their people and their tribe, or, you know, whatever their community, whoever their community is, they're going to want to be around those people again, because there's only so much you can achieve from the digital virtual world. I also think there's from a macro perspective, I know that lots of the big companies have put, you know, bans in 2020 on events. So obviously that would affect the traditional type of events business that we were a venue for. But I also think that there was, prior to this, there was a reason why they call it the experience economy became such a real thing, and why traditional forms of marketing and advertising shifted towards experiences. And that's because brands need to connect with consumers to sell their products. And you can't just do that through a TV spot or through an influencer holding up a product on Instagram, or through digital advertising, right? You need that physical touch point with your consumers to engage them, and I don't think that's going to go away. So yes, it's distressed for a period of time until people can be together at the numbers they were at before, and in the meantime there'll be smaller gatherings. You know, we're innovating in our events world, whereby, you know, smaller crew productions, virtual streaming, smaller gatherings of people that then have digital amplification to them to get to those larger audiences will happen in the meantime. But people aren't going to go back to spending millions of dollars on TV ads and just digital advertising. They're going to have to bring some connection back to their consumers. And I don't see that going away. So it's just about what happens in the meantime and what happens beyond it.
Cool.
We did a study, just quickly. We did a study last year with the Future Laboratory on Travel 2030, and we call it Traveler. It's everything about conscious decision to travel with a purpose. It's not just collecting airline miles anymore. And when we were talking about it last year, it was kind of, everyone was kind of asking questions and kind of thought it's pretty provocative. COVID-19, we don't have to wait until 2030 until we see it. This is now, right? So I think as long people will take conscious decisions when they want to meet people in places, and our spaces would always be in the sanctuary spaces, kind of what we created. That's kind of, I think, where everyone is kind of waiting, leaving their screens and going there. And innovation will kick in when these places and the spaces we all create, Neuehouse, ChoZen, things Tony does in urban development, it will be much more self-contained, right? I don't think we will see a lot of, there's no need to have a Italian water in the room in upstate New York. Why you don't produce your own water? Why you're not working with the local community? The whole supply chain doesn't work. So I think there will innovation happen. We will see much more self-containing spaces and retreats, and even in the cities. So I'm very excited about what we'll see. What's the future?
I think there's one more thing I would say, Andrew, actually,
please.
and this was in my notes, which I forgot about before, and Anthony, who's on the chat line, who I know reminds me of this point. I think trust. A lot of people talk about empathy. But trust and reciprocity is going to play a huge part in all of this. And I'm sure Tony thinks about this, and all of Markus's design hotel owners think about this too. Like, your customers put huge amounts of trust in you to provide. Markus said sanctuary, but a safe space, particularly when you're a tight knit curated community. And I think we take a lot of there's the onus on us. To be responsible and take that trust and provide a space for people to come back to, both in the short term and the long term, it weighs heavily on our shoulders. But then it becomes a two-way street. I think once we get to a place where people feel like we've done our job, then communities, and this was part of this conversation earlier, as part of a like-minded group of people, that trust does go two ways. So the people then coming into the space, you have to give them a trust to say, well, how many people am I going to bring back into an event or into my office space, and what is safe for my group? And there's some self-regulation. I think the governments will also sort of factor into the way they treat different categories and industries when they set out various guidelines. So I think trust and reciprocity is going to be a huge part of how spaces rebuild and how they allow their communities to come back and feel safe themselves.
Awesome. All right, before we sign off, because we're getting down to the end here, I want to throw one last question with a fairly short answer to you guys, which is, when are you welcoming guests back to all three of you guys have properties. When are you planning on opening up? And Markus, obviously, if you guys are representing 350 properties, there's not one answer, but for the ones that you're close to now, when do you feel like you're going to bring people back in? Tony, you may already be doing it now. I know at our properties, the ones that I have with my partners, we're just opening one today, and we've had one open the whole time, and we're sort of gearing up for what we hope will be an increase over the summer. We'll see. But tell us, let's start with you, Markus. When do you feel like you guys are starting to look at realistically opening properties and welcoming guests back?
Yeah, and don't worry, Andrew, I'm not going through 350 properties in detail, but we have in Asia Pacific probably 85% of our hotels reopened. That's the good news. Europe is a little bit different story, country by country. Obviously, it's a completely different situation in Italy versus a country like Sweden, where we will probably see hotels coming back. In North America, we reopened already spaces. So some of our owners, our friends from opened Proper Austin, Proper San Francisco just last week. We'll see probably the majority of our Canadian portfolio come back pretty soon. We reopened a few hotels of our owners in Mexico. So probably by June, first week of July, we have the majority of hotels reopened, but totally flexibility, right? There might be a plan today, we change the plan tomorrow. I know a lot of owners were working around Memorial Day weekend, had been postponed by another week. So I think flexibility is the name of the game right now, but probably you will see probably 85% of our spaces reopen in July.
Cool. Okay, 85% in July. Very good. Mr. Goss.
Yeah, I mean, we have, one space in New York, 2 in LA. We're monitoring by the hour, by the day guidelines and various different communications from governors and mayors in our respective cities and states. So it's kind of a moving target. Like we feel that both states will allow us to reopen in a very gradual way at some point in June. We're still evaluating it. We're primarily focusing on that innovation that we're as a team looking to make sure that the spaces are appropriately configured and cleanliness and hygiene and PPE and all those sorts of things. So there's a lot of work going on in the background to make sure that when we do reopen, that trust is something we can stand behind. And we don't have a hard date yet, but we're hopeful of June. But we're not going to do anything until we see a Cuomo or a Newsom or a Garcetti say that we can open, because only then will our customers feel ready to come back. And so it's a moving target, but we're hopeful on June, and it will be a great day.
Yeah, that would be a great day. I look forward to it. Tony, how about you?
So I think we're unique because we're a retreat center and not a hotel. So we have small groups, and obviously subject to local and state regulations, we're monitoring the situation. We are planning a artist in residency program over July, which will be a few artists that are selected for a program. There are some requests for corporate retreats in June, but I think probably we'll be back to business in the fall because that's our normal season here in South Florida and in Central Florida. But again, it's about building trust with your consumer, with your customer, with your community. And in our case, it is a great community. And what I realized, just to kind of put a footnote in the, and kind of just, close the loop on the digital space is, we are a small facility. So, we never thought about going into the virtual world, having a virtual platform, but, we are restricted by our geographical location and can only have so many people. So by expanding this offering, in a digital realm, it has expanded kind of what we have to offer from a thought leadership perspective, because we're not just creating physical experiences, we're trying to inspire people to be better people and to be activists and, aware of the environment and the consequences that they have. So I think it's been an interesting time for sure. And we're in the process of building an outdoor kitchen that's going to be open air that people can use in a very safe way and they feel comfortable.
Cool.
Yeah.
Love it. I love it. Listen, Markus, Jon, and Tony, I want to thank you guys. Thank everybody else who's on the call as well. Really appreciate it. We got a lot of stuff going on that we're continuing with digitally, as we discussed. So next week, you can find us on LinkedIn and Instagram primarily. Follow us, or you can see the whole schedule on there. Thank you guys. Really appreciate you joining, and thanks for everybody else for joining us. And look forward to seeing everybody in person sometime in the hopefully very near future. Thanks, guys, for joining. Really appreciate your participation.
Thanks for hosting, Andrew.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Markus, Jon.
Take care, man. All the best. Nice to meet you.
Thanks, guys.